The great train station on Mars was quiet that night. A soft white snow made of tiny frozen dust particles floated through the air like silver feathers. The huge glass dome above the platforms glowed faintly with blue emergency lights. It was a cold night, colder than usual because the main heating system had stopped working. Most people had already left looking for shelter. Only a few stayed behind, hoping the trains would start again. Jackson Cole walked slowly through the long, empty hallway. His heavy boots made a soft sound on the metal floor. He wore a long brown coat with silver buttons, a hat tilted slightly forward, and warm gloves. His face looked calm, but his sharp eyes noticed everything. People on Mars called him the Cowboy of Mars. Jackson was a rich man, one of the first people to build a large ranch on the Red Plains. He owned thousands of hectares of land filled with strong grass made for new animals brought from Earth. He was a quiet man who loved simple things: open skies, the smell of the fields, and the sound of trains arriving and leaving. Even though he was a millionaire, he didn't like special treatment. He often used the public trains like everyone else. Jackson came to the station that night to travel to the northern dome city. But when he arrived, he saw the signs flashing red. All trains delayed. Heating system offline. He sighed softly. He didn't mind waiting, but the cold was slowly growing stronger. Then he noticed her. On the last bench near platform 9, a young woman sat alone. Her shoulders shook slightly and her hands were wrapped around a small medical bag. Her coat was thin and frost had started to collect on her hair. She looked tired, like someone who had traveled a long way and had nowhere else to go. Jackson walked closer. He was careful not to scare her. "Miss," he said gently, his deep voice breaking the quiet. "Are you all right?" The woman lifted her head. Her eyes were soft but tired. I'm fine," she said with a small smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Just waiting for the train." Jackson looked at the flashing red lights again, then back at her. "The train's not coming soon," he said softly. "It may take hours." She nodded but didn't move. Her lips were turning pale from the cold. Jackson knew she wouldn't last long sitting there like that. Without thinking twice, he took off his warm thermal cloak and placed it gently around her shoulders. She gasped softly, surprised by the kindness. The cloak instantly began to warm her up. "You'll freeze if you stay like this," Jackson said. "There's an observation lounge near the west gate. The emergency heaters are still working there. Come on." For a second, she hesitated. She didn't know this man. But his voice was calm and kind. His eyes were steady, not forcing her, just inviting. Slowly, she nodded. He offered his gloved hand and she took it. Her fingers were ice cold and he held them carefully not to hurt her. They walked together down the hallway, passing quiet platforms and frozen signs. The wind outside the glass dome made a soft whistling sound. It felt like the whole world was holding its breath. When they reached the observation lounge, a few emergency lights glowed orange. A heater in the corner sent out warm air. The room wasn't crowded. Only 2 old travelers and a young couple sat near the windows. Jackson guided her to a seat near the heater. "Sit here," he said gently. She sat down and pulled the cloak tightly around herself. The color slowly returned to her cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered after a moment. "I didn't expect someone to help me." Everyone else was gone. Jackson shook his head. "No one should be left alone in this cold," he said simply. "What's your name?" "Ilara Finch," she answered softly. "I'm a nurse. I just came back from a medical mission near the southern ridge. The outpost ran out of power and the transport back was delayed. I came straight here to catch the train." "Jackson," he said, tipping his hat slightly. "Jackson Cole." Her eyes widened a little. "The Jackson Cole? The Cowboy of Mars?" she asked. Her tired voice carried a small spark of surprise. He gave a small smile. "That's what they call me. I just run a ranch. Nothing special." She let out a small laugh, her breath fogging the air. "Nothing special? You're one of the first people who made the Red Plains green." Jackson shrugged lightly. "Takes a lot of work and a lot of help from good people. Not a one-man job." For a few minutes they sat quietly, listening to the soft humming of the heater. Outside the window, the Red Plains stretched into darkness. Tiny white snowflakes floated down, shining faintly in the station lights. Jackson noticed how carefully she held her small medical bag. "You look like you've had a long trip," he said. "I have," she replied. The outpost was cold. Many people got sick from the low temperatures. I was the only nurse there. It was hard, but we managed. When I finally reached the station, I thought I'd get on the train and sleep all the way home. She gave a soft, tired laugh. But the universe had other plans. Jackson nodded. Mars has a way of surprising people. She looked at him curiously. Why are you here? You could have used a private shuttle. You're a millionaire. Jackson's eyes softened. Money doesn't change who I am. I like to travel with people. It reminds me of where I came from. For the first time, she gave him a real smile. It was small but warm. That's nice, she said. Most rich people don't think like that. He leaned back slightly in his chair. Maybe they should. They talked a little more as time passed. She told him about her life as a nurse, how she came from a small dome city, and how she loved helping people. He told her about his ranch, the animals he raised, and how he often rode out alone at sunset, watching the sky turn golden over the red land. As they spoke, the cold night outside grew darker, but inside the lounge the air was warm and soft. Ilara's hand stopped shaking. Her eyes slowly lost their tired look. Then a station announcement echoed through the dome. Attention! All trains are still delayed. Heating system repairs are in progress. Please stay inside safe areas. Jackson glanced at the clock. It was going to be a long night. He looked at Ilara, who was still wrapped in his cloak. She was watching the snow outside, her face calm now. You can rest here, he said gently. I'll keep watch, she turned to him. Why are you being so kind to me? She asked softly. Jackson thought for a moment. Because kindness is free, he said finally. And it matters, especially on nights like this. Ilara felt something warm spread through her chest. It wasn't just the heater. It was the feeling of safety, something she hadn't felt for a long time during her hard mission. Hours passed. A few travelers left, others slept quietly. Jackson and Ilara shared small stories, soft laughter, and moments of silence. She told him about a little girl she had helped at the outpost. He told her about a horse-like animal on his ranch that always tried to follow him around. Little by little, they both forgot about the cold outside. At one point, Ilara leaned her head gently against the chair and closed her eyes. You must be tired, Jackson said softly. She nodded. I haven't slept in 2 days. Rest, he said. You're safe here, she smiled weakly. Thank you, Jackson. He didn't reply. He just sat quietly, watching over her as she drifted into light sleep. The soft light from the heater painted a golden glow on her face. Outside, the snow continued to fall on the red plains of Mars. The station was silent, but inside, something new had quietly begun. Neither Jackson nor Ilara planned it, but their meeting on that cold night would become something much bigger than either of them could imagine. For now, it was just a quiet night, a warm cloak, and two people who found each other when they least expected it. And that was how their story began. Morning came slowly on Mars. The thin red light of the rising sun spread across the glass dome of the train station. The snow outside sparkled like a field of tiny diamonds. Inside the observation lounge, the heater hummed softly. Ilara Finch opened her eyes slowly. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then she saw the warm orange glow of the heater and the soft fabric of Jackson's cloak around her shoulders. Jackson Cole was still sitting beside her, his hat tilted forward slightly. He hadn't slept much, but he didn't look tired. His calm eyes were watching the brightening horizon through the glass. Good morning, she said in a quiet voice. He turned his head and gave her a soft smile. Good morning. You slept well? She nodded slowly. Better than I have in a long time, she said honestly. I didn't think I'd find rest at a cold train station. He chuckled softly. Sometimes good things happen in strange places. The station speakers suddenly came to life. Attention. Train services are still delayed due to heating system failure. Emergency shelters are available for travelers. Ilara sighed softly. I guess the trains won't come soon. No, Jackson said, adjusting his hat. But we can make something useful out of this time. She looked at him curiously. What do you mean? He pointed to a group of travelers gathering near the main gate. Families with small children, old men and women, and a few workers stood shivering together. Some had thin coats, some none at all. The emergency shelter could not hold everyone. They need help, Jackson said simply. You're a nurse. I have resources. Together we can make this night easier for them. Ilara's eyes softened. She had spent months helping people at a small outpost. She couldn't just sit and watch. Yes, she said firmly. Let's help. Jackson stood up, tall and steady. He sent a short message from his wristcom to his ranch team. Within minutes, small delivery drones started flying toward the station, bringing extra thermal blankets, food packs, and portable heaters from his storage. People looked up in surprise as the drones landed one after another on the platform. Alara moved quickly. She helped wrap the blankets around children and guided the elderly to warmer areas. She checked people's hands, faces, and breathing to make sure no one was too cold. Her movements were careful but full of quiet strength. Jackson worked beside her, carrying heaters, setting up warm corners, and making sure everyone had a place to sit. Though he was a millionaire, he acted like any other man. Strong hands, calm voice, gentle words. One little boy, no older than 6, tugged at Alara's sleeve. His small face was red from the cold. "Miss," he said softly, "is the sun going to warm us soon?" Alara knelt down, wrapped him in a soft silver blanket, and smiled gently. "Yes," she said. "The sun will rise and we'll be warm. You're safe here." Jackson watched her quietly. He saw the kindness in her eyes, the calm in her hands. She had spent the night alone, cold and tired. But now she stood like a bright light for everyone else. Something in his heart shifted softly, like snow melting under the sun. Soon the entire waiting area was filled with soft blankets and warm laughter. People began to relax. Someone shared music from a small speaker. A group of children played a quiet game near the heater. The cold night that could have been a time of fear slowly turned into a moment of shared hope. Alara and Jackson worked side by side the entire day. They gave out warm drinks, helped set up sleeping spaces, and encouraged people to stay calm. At one point, Alara sat beside Jackson on a bench. Her cheeks were pink from the cold, but her eyes were bright. "I didn't expect this when I came here," she said. "What did you expect?" Jackson asked. "I thought I'd just be another traveler waiting for a train," she said softly. "I didn't think I'd meet someone who'd make me feel safe." Jackson turned his head slightly toward her. "You make other people feel safe," he said. "That matters more." She looked at him quietly for a moment. No one had said something like that to her before. She had always worked hard, but most people only saw her as a nurse, not as a person. Jackson saw more, and in his calm voice she felt trust. As the day moved on, the station workers finally managed to fix part of the heating system. Warm air began to flow through the main hall. A cheer went up among the travelers. A young station officer approached Jackson and Alara. "Sir, ma'am," he said with gratitude in his voice, "thank you for helping. Without you, this would have been very hard." Jackson tipped his hat politely, just doing what anyone should do. But Alara noticed how the officer looked at Jackson, with respect. She knew not everyone would have acted like he did. That evening, the trains finally started moving again. One after another, announcements filled the dome. Train to North Dome departing from Platform 3. Train to Western Fields departing from Platform 6. Travelers began to gather their things. Many came to thank Alara and Jackson before leaving. Some gave them warm hugs. Some just smiled with wet eyes. The little boy Alara had helped ran to her and handed her a small piece of folded paper. "For you," he said shyly. Inside, he had drawn a picture, a big glass dome, falling snow, and 2 people standing under it. Alara felt tears sting her eyes, but she smiled warmly. "Thank you," she whispered. When the crowd thinned, Jackson and Alara finally stood together on the platform. The soft sound of trains filled the air again. "It looks like your train's here," Jackson said gently. "You should get some rest." Alara held the little drawing in her hands. She didn't want to leave so soon. "And you?" she asked. "I'll go back to my ranch," he said with a small smile. "The animals are waiting." She laughed softly. Of course, but then they both grew quiet. It was strange. They had met only one night ago, but something deep and warm had grown between them. Not loud, not forced, and just quiet and real, like a flame that refused to go out. Alara took a small breath. "Thank you, Jackson," she said, "for helping me, for helping everyone." He tipped his hat again, his voice calm. "Thank you for standing with me." As the train doors opened, she hesitated for a moment. Jackson didn't say anything, but his eyes said a lot. She stepped onto the train slowly, still wrapped in his cloak. Before the doors closed, she turned and waved. He raised his hat slightly in reply. The train began to move. The station grew smaller in the window. Alara sat down, holding the little drawing in her hand and his warm cloak around her shoulders. She didn't know where this feeling would lead, but she knew something had changed. Weeks passed. News of what happened at the station spread across Mars. People talked about how a rancher and a nurse had kept hundreds warm during the coldest night of the year. They became a symbol of kindness and courage. The Human Kindness Network was born, a group of volunteers and organizations working together to make sure no traveler would ever be stranded in the cold again. Jackson offered part of his resources to build warm shelters across the colonies. Alara became the head nurse of the program, training people to help others during emergencies. They met often to plan and work together. Each meeting felt less like work and more like coming home. One evening, many months later, they stood together outside Jackson's ranch. The sky above Mars was dark and clear, filled with silver stars. The wind was cold, but the warmth between them was stronger. "I never thought a cold night at a train station would bring us here," Alara said softly. "Sometimes," Jackson replied. "The best stories start in quiet places." They stood in silence for a moment. The soft wind moved gently through the grass. Alara turned to him and smiled. "I'm glad I found you that night." Jackson looked at her with the same steady eyes he had the night they met. "I'm glad I found you too." Their love was not loud. It was quiet, strong, and full of kindness. The kind of love that builds something bigger than two people. In the years that followed, the Kindness Network grew across Mars and beyond. Trains ran safely through every storm. No one was left alone in the cold again. And whenever people spoke of the night the heating failed, they remembered one man and one woman, a cowboy and a nurse, who turned a freezing night into the beginning of hope. And so their love story didn't just belong to them. It belonged to everyone.